Thanksgiving has just passed us, a holiday where a great deal of our nation spends time cooking, catching up with family and friends, and saying what they're thankful for, only to throw it all out the window the next day by consuming our hard-earned, underpaid salaries on new TVs on stolen land. I did not and do not participate on Black Friday because of my teenage retail trauma. Shout out to my first job ever, Kmart. I did, however, create Rocky's random and real gratitude list. Da-da-da-da-da. Weed. Number 1. Chunky ass house slippers. Vibrators, both spin brush and regs. Winning lotto tickets of the past. Memes. Legalization of weed. Concerts. Concerts for real. Concerts are the best. The mute button. Popcorn. Carbs, the ability to parallel park, the invention of Spotify. Seriously, there was a time when I had to burn CDs. I'm grateful for every time I don't have a hangover. Travel. Being born when I was. Imagine being born in 1704. No thanks. All the good people in my life, family, friends, and last but not least, the Party God Squad. What are you thankful for?
It's time for
the
Rocket
Welcome to the Rocky Rundown, where you get to learn a little bit about my week. Party God Squad, hello! Did you have a nice time with your families and chosen families? I sure did. I'm very lucky. My family, we like to hang out and go out and be social with each other. My cousins came to visit their Northeast family, and it was nonstop laughs from the moment they got here till our very last hug. One of the cool things about family, especially family that you don't see as much, is when you do get together, noticing all the similarities you have. Personally, I'm somewhat of like a half a jaw roll featuring a shanty song. I'm always there when you call, but not always on time. My 2 cousins strolled in a little late for a dinner we were having together because they were having drinks at my brother's job. So I ordered their food for them. That way it was in before the restaurant's kitchen closed. Did they order 2 different forms of potatoes? Of course, we Irish, baby! Before they got there, I made a joke about them ordering potato-only products, just as their tipsy little asses stroll in making more jokes about our potato-loving heritage. They didn't even know that I just got done making the same jokes, and that is the power of a bloodline. The next night after this potato-filled dinner was the night before Thanksgiving. A night I always thought was the biggest party night of the year, so we put on our Wednesday best. My Wednesday best is pink neon. And because I thought this was the biggest party night of the year, I kept hyping it up. We planned on doing some bar hopping near Yale, and we ended up at this dope bar with live music, which of course we all love. I will say the band looked about 12 years old, but their souls were old, and the music was good. I looked over, and on top of the bar was this big bowl of bar nuts. Why? Why do we still have bar nuts, people? That's not right. If you eat bar nuts right now, you're nasty. So me and my family were jamming out to the music, and I noticed one of my cousins has this mouth breather standing strong at 5'4", talking right in her face. A pest, of course. So her sister, my cousin, notices, and we share a look like, ugh, he was a walking chode with the personality of a banana peel. Now he wants to get all of us involved, and he starts asking us our thoughts on COVID while doing this Beavis and Butthead chortle in between each sentence. Did I mention my cousin who he was hitting on? It was her birthday. And if you saw this bridge troll with your own 2 eyes, you would have said this woman needs birthday rescuing. My cousin, her sister, the brave and mighty Olivia, turns to this lint licker and says firm and calmly, "Hey, we don't feel like talking to you. We're good." And it wasn't rude, and it wasn't mean. It was called get better lines or don't waste our time. I know life is hard hitting on people in these streets. The color flushed from his face and he turned away defeated. Sorry, we're not sorry, boy. And that's how we feel about COVID. That brings us to Rocky's highest thoughts, my most stoned thoughts of the week. Number 1. Spotify's weird. I know I said I'm thankful for it, but it's still weird. And here's why. If you don't listen on your computer, you forget it's also a social media app. You can follow people you know and see what they're listening to. So anyone from high school who saw me listen to All Too Well 8 times in a row from the comfort of their computer, it wasn't a glitch. And it also wasn't an invitation to reach out. Number 2. Words are numbers, and numbers are words. And lastly, number 3, in the beginning of the movie Next Friday, Craig just throws the excess weed that fell out from his blunt on top of a magazine over his shoulder. Off into the abyss. That was the most unrealistic shit I ever did see a stoner do. My guest this week is comedian Electra Telesford. Electra is not only a hilarious and insightful comic on her own, she is also part of the infamous duo Two Bearded Ladies. Her wild word was 2020, our old friend from the long ago, not so long ago, and her story is fun, while simultaneously being wild. If you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Wild Nights with Rocky, on Twitter at Wild Nights Pod. I'm on YouTube at Wild Nights with Rocky, so please follow along there to catch extended interviews with all of my guests. To the tried and true members of the Party God Squad who've written a review already on Apple Podcasts, thank you so much because it really does make a difference. A future thank you to all of you who are going to leave a review before or right after this episode is finished. Who loves you, baby? And now, please enjoy my Wild Nights conversation with Electra Telesford. Electra, welcome. Thank you for doing the podcast.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I had your comedy partner on many months ago, Nora Yaya, and then I had the pleasure of seeing you two in the New York Comedy Festival in your show Two Bearded Ladies. So that was
Yeah,
quite a treat.
thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I had a great time. You guys had a great lineup, and I was loving those shoes. You wore some pretty stylish shoes that day.
Yes, I had a pair of like snake skin booties or
Yeah.
yeah. I had to take those off. I was like, I've had enough. I was
Oh my
like,
God, you did it for the look though, and I was all
I
for
did it
it.
for the look. Oh man, never again. They were like pointed at the toes. It
Yep.
was like I was like, why do people do this to themselves?
I have no idea. If it's not a chunky heel or one of those like I have a pair of Payless shoes, which I know rest in peace Payless, but I had these like black neutral little heels that I would wear everywhere that was so comfortable. If it wasn't that pair of shoes or a chunky heel, your girl stays flat. I stay one with the earth.
Yeah, same. I'm like pretty tall, so I usually
Yes.
don't wear heels, but sometimes like an outfit feel like there were no sneakers that I could have worn that were gonna work, you know? So I was
Yeah.
like, let me just do this. And you know, the thing is like when you first put on a pair of heels, like they feel comfortable immediately.
Yeah.
And then you start walking and you're like, oh no, 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 no,
I'm in
no.
pain. I'm hurting, and I
Yeah.
especially feel like after the year that we just had, you know, fashion choices take a back seat to sweatpants. Like a version of me in 2020 might have felt differently about heels.
Yep, yep. 2020.
2020.
2020.
So Electra's wild word was 2020. So
Yep,
I'm excited to hear your Wild Night story. I know the Party God Squad is excited to hear your Wild Night story. Electra, give us your Wild Night story 2020.
gladly. So I will start by saying that I'm not a wild person,
Okay.
you know, so I'm gonna say like wild is a spectrum, right?
Mhm,
Like
of course it
so,
is.
you know, like Charlie Sheen and Robert Downey would have a far more wild story, but for me, this is pretty wild. So
It's whatever your definition of wild is.
it is, yeah.
Yeah.
So it starts actually December. How many days are in December? 30, 31,
31. 31.
31st, 2019,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so this is New Year's Eve. And I basically like didn't have plans. I always feel like New Year's Eve parties are just always a bust, you know, like they're not.
Okay. They're not for you, not your jam.
Yeah, like I just feel like they have such hype to live up to that they rarely ever live up to the hype.
Right.
So I was at home and then I had a friend, I'll call him something else, call him
Oh yeah.
Kyle, right?
Kyle.
And Kyle was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just home, whatever." And he's like, "Well, another friend, let's call him James. James is cooking for everybody, and he's like
Uh-huh.
doing like tasting. It felt very classy. He's
Yeah.
like, "Why don't you come over?" So I was like, "Okay, I'll come over." So we end up
And this was
I end up
pretty
going,
last minute for you.
yeah, right. So
Mhm.
I whip up an outfit, right, and I go, and so I go there, and it's like everything's very chill, as people what they said was going to happen. There's a
Yeah.
lot of delicious food, and then somebody whips out like some marijuana, so we smoke. That's
Fabulous.
that's real normal.
Yes.
So they're like, let's go out. So we end up going out, and one of the people that we were with is really big on coke and Molly. That's
Oh,
like
okay.
their thing.
Gotcha.
That's their jam. This is before fentanyl was and everything,
I
right?
always
20,
warn people on here. I'm like, just to stick with other drugs because cocaine is not hitting right.
yeah, right
It
now
is,
it's
yes, it's
not the
not the
cleanest
move.
it's ever been.
Mm-mm.
So we're all hanging out, whatever, and the girl who had the Molly and the Coke was like, "Do you want?" And like I'm a pretty non-user, I would
Yeah.
say, but I was like, it's New Year's Eve, so let me try the Molly, right?
Had you done them either of them before?
No,
Okay,
no,
so
I had
wow.
not.
So this was just like, okay, she's going all out.
This is 2019
Mm-hmm.
going to 2020, new year, new me, right? So I'm like,
Okay.
give me the Molly.
Uh-huh.
So I do the Molly, and this I guess everyone in the group does the Molly, and I'm like, okay, this feels very like I don't feel anything,
Okay.
so I'm like, did
Yeah.
I do it right? Like, did my nostrils give out on me
give
midway?
give me the instruction
Yeah, right.
manual.
Yeah. So I'm like, so do the Molly, whatever. And the thing about Molly is like you don't realize you are on it until you look at what everyone else is doing and you're doing something so different. Because we were like
Mm.
dancing, I'm like, wow, I've never felt so connected to a group of people in my life. And
Yeah.
that's how I feel known, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And was this a
So
close group of friends or was this just kind of like some auxiliary, like not auxiliary, but maybe not the normal group?
it was like a mixture. It was like a mixture of people that I was very close with at the time, and then a
Gotcha.
mixture of some, like girlfriends of this,
New friends. Yeah, 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 yeah.
we're dancing. The music, looking back at it, could not have been that good because it was a bar. Like it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
it was a club, right? And we end up where do we end up after that? We end up going to another place, right? And there someone brought out Coke, not in our group, right?
Yeah.
But somebody had like an incident on the dance floor.
Oh, like they passed out?
Yeah, like they passed out on the dance floor. And so we're like, is everyone's like freaking out? Is everyone okay? Is everyone okay?
Yeah.
Person, I've never seen anything like this, but like the person like just rise it, like sits up, like they passed out and then they rise, like kind of like I'm just if I can do it. Like so they're laying here and they just like
Like pop like
and then start
Jack in the Box
yeah,
kind
like
of.
popped up and then starts dancing like they'd never danced before. Like it was like someone had possessed their bodies. And we're like,
Yeah.
we want to obviously party with that person. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we start partying with that person, having a good time. Then this person now becomes part of our group.
And they were flying
And
solo? Or is it hard to say? Maybe they were just
it's
like
hard to
one of those
say.
people, yeah,
It's
that were just bopping
yeah, so it's
around.
hard to say. Yeah, one of those people who just night crawlers,
Yeah.
right? So then we go to this diner because everybody's hungry,
Yeah.
right? When everyone's famished, and they're playing some amazing music. And it
Okay.
turns out, yeah, that the person who rose from the ashes was a drummer.
Okay.
So then they start hitting this like crazy beat. And then the booth next to us, turns out those women were dancers.
Oh my
So
God.
that starts, it becomes like West Side Story, or
Yeah.
they just start dancing, and it's like they're on the table. And for some reason, the diner is totally cool with this.
Hmm.
Like, I know it's like the culture of the people behind
Yeah.
that are working there. So everyone's dancing, having a great
And
time.
it's New Year's Eve too.
And it's New Year's Eve, and
Hmm.
everybody just wants to have fun, right?
Yeah.
So then from there, those dancers now join the groups, and this group is massive, right?
Yeah.
And we end up back at the original apartment where the dinner was, and I'm hanging out, everyone's fine, and then like some people go into the bedroom, and me and my friend are talking about how good this New Year's Eve has been. At this point, it's after midnight, so now it's
Yeah.
New Year's Day,
Hmm.
and we start hearing sounds from the bedroom, and at this
Okay.
point, it is the dancers,
Hmm.
the person that was on the
Ones and
yes,
twos.
the ones and twos, and they are having a threesome.
Okay.
And then there's another group of people that were part of the original group, and they are also having I wouldn't describe it as a threesome, but it was like two different, well, foursome. It's like two different groups of people
Maybe a
having
themsome?
sex. Yeah, having like sex on the same
Yeah.
bed. So at this point, there's, yeah, 7 people having sex in one room.
So there's like a group of four that are kind of doing their thing. We have the threesome doing their thing, but they're all on the same top. They're all in
In
the
the
bed.
same, yeah, they're all in the
Okay.
same
And this
space.
is nobody's apartment. None of them live in this apartment.
One of them.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
One of them, yeah, one of
Okay.
them. Like, I
Gotcha.
guess he approved.
Because I was like,
I think it
that's
was his,
mad disrespectful.
yeah, no, it
If
was
the
actually,
person is there though.
yeah, it was his bedroom actually. It
Gotcha.
was his
Okay.
bedroom, so he fully approved.
He's like,
And
I've been dreaming of this night.
yeah, exactly, right? So then me and my friend Kyle are just like, what is going on? So we're like just opening the door and everyone's just going at it. And we're just like, what is
Yeah.
happening right now? They're enjoying themselves. And then we just knock out.
There was no part of you that was like, this is my if there was ever a moment for me to join in on a gangbang, you were like, nah.
No, that was not the,
The
there's
Molly
never
had
the
worn
moment
off.
for me. Yeah, the Molly had long worn off. The Molly had long worn off. And I was just like, so we ended up knocking out on the couch and waking up and having breakfast. And that was my story. That was my wild night. I'm more of an observer now that I think
Oh
about it, but it was pretty
man,
wild.
it's better to be a listener and an observer. I didn't say that, Busta Rhymes did. And I'll keep plugging Snoop Dogg's album every week until everyone who listens to the show listens to it. But yes, so I will say this, you slept on the couch, great.
Mhm.
You stayed over, great. In the
Yep.
morning, did like 7 people pop out of this room like one after the other while you're sleeping on the couch? Like you missed out on this orgy.
By the time I came to, I would say, I want to say there were like 3 people left. So I think they just saw themselves. I think after a moment like that, you just see yourself out.
Yeah, the sun's coming up and you're like, "Oh, I got a bunch of juices on me. I
It's
gotta hit the
time
road."
for me to go.
Well, that was indeed wild for sure. And then what I think is interesting about this story, especially, is that you have this night. You told yourself that you were, I don't expect much from New Year's Eve. You go to this party, you do your thing, and then afterwards, 3 months later, we hit the pandemic.
Mhm.
Not even 2.5 months later, we hit the pandemic.
Yeah.
So maybe this new chapter of you where more of this stuff was becoming normalized was starting to blossom, and you don't even get the opportunity to have those experiences again because we get locked in the house.
Yep. Immediately got locked in. Yeah, pretty much. And then I think I got the flu like a couple of weeks after that. So I was even out of commission before the
For
pandemic.
COVID.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, yeah, yeah. So I was
I was really
long out
sick
of
around
it.
New Year's Eve too in the city. Like that was my remember my coworkers, we were on a group chat. It was 5 of us. And I know everyone does that whole thing where they're like, I had COVID in January. I know I had it. But we really were on a group chat, like 5 people who don't normally talk on a group chat saying, is this the sickest everyone has ever been in their entire life?
Mhm.
And yeah, so I get it. You could have had the flu, but it could have been what was going around. And
Yeah.
when you said I'm an observer. I've listened to your comedy, I've listened to your podcast, and I got to see you live, which was fantastic. It does seem like your perspective is very observational, very chill, very even keel, but very observational. So have you always kind of been like that?
Yeah, I'm not big on being the center of anything,
Okay.
you know? I don't
Mm-hmm.
really feel it's like which is interesting, right? Because I'm still like a stand-up
Yeah, I
comedian
was
and
just
still
gonna
like,
say.
but
Mm-hmm.
like I always feel like more comfortable being on the peripheral of
Right.
whatever or periphery of what's going on than being the center of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Um yeah, it's not really my nature to be like, look at me, like, you know what I mean? So it's just like it's interesting because it's like maybe I would have been more engaged in this story if there weren't so many people, but it just got to be like a really big group, and I was like, what
Yeah.
is going on, you know?
Yeah.
So when it's my time for the spotlight, I'll be in it, but it didn't feel like my time. The
Right,
story.
right. But it still was a wild night part of your life.
Yeah.
And it's something that's like obviously not something you're gonna forget. It was probably the last biggest party you went to before
Mhm.
things shut down. So that's obviously gonna stay with you. But it is interesting that you say that about yourself, how you don't like the spotlight, because I feel like you, just from seeing you, you command the spotlight when you're up there. You have the attention of the room, and you must enjoy that because you're good at what you do. So you must enjoy doing stand up and being the spotlight, even if it is for 10 to 15 minutes a show.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't even know how I feel about
Yeah.
it. Like, it's interesting because like I do like stand up comes really naturally to me, I would
Mm-hmm.
say. But it's just I feel like I want people to hear my jokes,
Yeah.
and I would just as soon like I wonder if you asked a stand up comedian like, okay, people will hear your jokes, but you won't be on stage. Like they'll laugh, da, 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 but
Yeah.
they still want to do it because so many people do it for like the attention. But I feel like
Yeah.
I would just gladly do joke telling on a podcast, and like I'd be like a Sia, right? Like Sia
Yeah.
wants to be a singer, but she doesn't necessarily want you to like see her face,
Yeah.
or like engage with her in that way. So I feel like that's yeah, more of a Sia when it comes to I want people to hear what I'm saying, and because I'm a stand-up, they have to see me, but it's not the most important thing.
Right. That's you. You're more about getting the point across and the funnies across without you're like,
Yeah.
I could care less if I was standing here or not. But that's why you and Nora did start a podcast, and it's kind of like under the umbrella of your brand, Two Bearded Ladies.
Mhm.
Which I again said to her, we were talking about, the name behind Two Bearded Ladies, and it's because you get to a certain age and you're like, I never had a uh dark ass chin hair in the middle of my chin before. You're new. You're not welcome. So it
Mhm.
it is where the name stemmed from. But you two have your brand as Two Bearded Ladies. So is the podcast something that you want to continue, or is it something that you're like, we'll put out an episode when we feel like it, as long as we just continue marketing ourselves as this?
That's interesting. I mean, I feel like we hope we're just like I'm really like open when it comes to a lot of things.
Uh
Like it
huh.
feels like working right now. I really like working with Nora. I think she's really creative. I think she offsets me like pretty well. Like we have a good
Hmm.
balance in terms of
Great
our
balance. Yeah.
dynamic. Um, so I guess like when it comes to the podcast, like we want to do it on a larger scale. So we're kind of figuring out like what's the best way of going about it.
Hmm.
The other thing is we both have like intense full-time jobs too.
Yeah.
So it's just hard. And we're stand-up comedians outside of each other,
Yeah.
like we're doing that thing. So it's just like about like it's definitely on the docket. Like how do we make this a bigger thing? But we're also kind of just trying to balance like regular life stuff too.
And it's hard too, right? Because we all just came back from this world where we were behind a screen for so long. And
Mhm.
then now it's like, okay, now I have to really balance who I am outside of the screen. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
when did you realize that you wanted to do this, that you were a funny person? Some people are like, I was funny since I was little, or some people are like, I've had a high school trauma that made me funny, like whatever. When did you say, oh, I think I'm funny enough to continue this? Or start it up rather.
So really what I wanted to do, well, I have a performing arts
Mm-hmm.
background, as I was saying, so I went to like a performing arts middle school, continued throughout high school, and pretty much stopped like fully in college or a little bit
How
before
very
college.
Taina of you.
Yeah. So I basically, put that on the back burner, was like, "Okay, I get a regular job, da da da." And then I decided like I couldn't teach forever.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't see myself being like 55, 60 and retiring and doing it for that long.
Right.
So I asked myself, what do I really want to do? And I said, like, I've always been interested in entertainment. I've always like I've been in that space before. So I decided like television writing was what I wanted to do because it's like in the
Okay.
background, da da da. And then I noticed that in like my research that a lot of stand-up comedians are writers.
Mm-hmm.
So or more specifically, a lot of people who wrote for SNL, which is where I wanted to write at the time,
Yeah.
went to UCB. So I went to UCB. They had no sketch classes available at the time, so I took an improv
Classic.
class to get started.
Mm-hmm.
And then in my improv class, like they have this thing that they make us do where it's like if the teacher instructor pointed to you, you would have to tell a story, then they'd point to another person and they would tell a story. And if they pointed back to you, you'd have to continue your story. And during that activity, like
I
the
remember that
instructor
one. Yeah.
Yeah, and all the people in the class said, like, every time you talk, it sounds like you're doing stand-up. So one of the girls from the class asked me if I wanted to go to an open mic. I went to an open
Wow.
mic. It went really well. Like, it was like a
Mhm.
5-minute mic. Gianmarco Cerezi was the person that was he's now at the Cellar. He was the one
Mhm.
that, like, was hosting it. And from there, I just kept doing it. I just
That's
kept doing it. That was
amazing.
that was 3 years ago, yeah, and so much has happened in 3 years. It's kinda crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially considering like everything we've all been through. So
Yeah,
for
1 year was a pandemic year, so it's really been, like, 2 years of stand-up.
what are you most excited about now that we can get back out there?
Um, I'm this shit is crazy. Like, this is
Yeah.
like, this stand-up comedy and the entertainment industry are just so much more crazy than you think they are from, like, the outside looking in.
Mhm.
So, it just, like just I'm excited for, like, the roller coaster. I'm excited for where I'm at, where I'm in such a good place that I'm able to have these ups and downs.
Yeah.
I recognize a lot of people just have downs or, like, they're still like, there's different, like, milestones, and I think I've met a lot of them. So it's just a matter of, like, I don't know, like, I'm just open to, like, what it has for me and, like, what's in
Yeah.
store because it's, like, there's just I can't even tell you because who the fuck knows, you
Who
know? Like,
knows? Yeah,
it could
everything's
be
unpredictable.
JFL, it could be a writing gig, it could be some random thing I could have never anticipated. It could be the podcast, it could
Yeah.
be a bunch of so who knows?
Now
I
I
don't know.
know I know you're originally from Brooklyn. Do you still live? You still? Yeah, we won't do your address and, and drop pin,
Yeah, I'm
but
still in
yeah,
Brooklyn.
but
Yep.
Brooklyn is a very big place, and so that's where you're from originally. And I get to speak to a lot of comedians from both New York and LA because of
Mhm.
the power of Zoom.
Yeah.
And one of the things that a lot of the LA comedians will always tell me is that, they don't get as many mics and they don't get as many shows in a night because they're driving everywhere. Where in New
Mhm.
York, you could get 5 shows in and a night, and then everybody's seeing each other. You're seeing the same people. It's like building this bigger camaraderie and less
Mhm.
businessy on this side. Have you ever performed in LA, or is that something on like a short term where you're like, I would love to get out to LA and do some stand up and kind of see what that's like, or is that not of interest as much?
It definitely is, like, I feel like one thing I've observed with other comedians whose paths look like mine, they all end up in LA eventually,
Yeah.
usually for, like, some kind of writing gig or acting,
Mhm.
but everyone says you work out your stand-up in New York, and
Yeah.
then the time you go to LA, it's like you're miles ahead of it. It's like when a Russian person comes and does a math class in America, like, they know everything
Yeah, yeah,
already.
yeah, yeah. They're more
It's,
skilled
like,
in it.
more advanced. So, I mean, I
Yeah.
definitely hope to perform in LA at some point, but I'm kind of looking at it like a lot of the more seasoned comics are starting to move out there. People who are like I look at myself as beginner level in terms of
Mhm.
where my career is. So, like, mid-level are starting to move out there, and I hope, like, my contacts with them in New York will cross over when it comes time to go to LA, so I'm not, like, starting all over, you
Yeah.
know? 'Cause comedy is so big on the vouch, like, people
Yes.
vouching for you, being like, "This girl is funny," or "This guy is great," is so important.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. It can open up a lot of doors. Actually, I had Anthony Moore on the show,
Oh,
and
he's
he
great, yeah.
he's amazing. And he was talking about his whole story. Was basically about how Kevin Hart remembered him and opened the door for him at the Cellar. And if it wasn't
Yep,
for Kevin Hart saying, "This dude is really funny. I'm vouching for him," it probably would have taken him a little bit longer just to get into the Cellar, just because he didn't know,
the
people didn't know exactly who he was just yet. But yeah, the vouch is everything. This was awesome. I'm so glad you shared that story with me. I hope that you get to have a few more of those wild nights in the future. But even to think about bouncing to somebody new's apartment back, like with strangers, bringing strangers back to your house or a friend's house, I mean, that just feels so foreign right now. So
yeah.
cheers to those good times. And Electra, where can anybody and everybody follow you?
Uh, on Instagram at Electra_Telesford, Twitter Electra_Teles, no Ford.
No Ford.
And then they can always follow the Two Bearded Ladies. I think that's the Instagram account. One of them,
Mm-hmm.
either Two Bearded Ladies or the Two Bearded Ladies. Nora knows it better than me, but yeah, that's
Absolutely.
where they can follow me.
And the rest of the year, you're taking it kind of easy and you're going to hit it back in January, or do you have any shows in the city coming up in December?
Yeah, so I do have some. None that are super. Oh no, sorry. December 19th. Me and Nora are back at the stand.
Beautiful.
At 7 p.m. It's gonna be a
Perfect.
great show. Yeah.
December 19th, you can find two bearded ladies at the stand.
Yep.
They're going to put on a hell of a show and they'll have a hell of a lineup. And this has been a hell of a conversation. So, Electra, I want to thank you so, so much for doing the show. I hope you have a great holiday and we'll talk soon, all right?
All right. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Bye.